What's up, YouTube? So today I want to talk about a couple of ideas for writing interesting bass patterns. So this question came through from one of my Patreon Inner Circle members. If you don't know what that is, I basically run this kind of like music support group thing through Patreon and Discord if you want more info on that. Links are in the description. Anyway, these aren't new techniques. I've discussed some of these in older videos and stuff, but I thought it would be cool to kind of just like bring it all together in a more modern video and show you my sort of more up-to-date approach for writing interesting bass lines, and a couple of tricks to just make it really quick, make it really simple. Yeah, so without blabbering too much, let's dive in and have a look. Okay, so I've got this relatively empty project that I've been creating here. All of these sounds are available on my store. So all of these drum sounds you can get on my store. The bass sound is from a Serum preset pack, which I put out not too long ago. The kick drum, everything is available from my store. But I'm not going to go through how to create these sounds today. I'm going to focus more on how to write interesting bass MIDI patterns. Okay, so notice how I'm not putting anything in the bass channel. What I want to do is I want to stick to the clip launchers for this, the beginning part of the video. And for those in Ableton, you can kind of jump between session and arrangement view. I kind of like how in Bitwig you can have a little mini session view in your arrangement view, which is pretty cool. So you can kind of create mini clips here, kind of paste them together. You'll see the workflow is really cool having this here. So yeah, let's just listen to what we have so far. Okay, so here we have bass pattern. It's just a flat bass pattern with the note F. So F is a very common choice for various reasons. I'm not going to go too much into the science of it, but it's a pretty easy key to work with. It's not too low so that the subs struggle to reproduce them, and it's not too high so that they're kind of above the sub range. So F is a good key to start with if you're just getting into things and you don't want to spend too much time, fixing subs and fixing stuff in the mix. I would say just kind of stick with F or F sharp or somewhere around there, F sharp, G, or E, and don't vary too much from that. But a trick that I like to use is to use transposing. So what that means is we write all of our melodies and stuff in a particular key and then shift it to a different key. So this is incredibly powerful because it allows us to change things very easily after the fact. So here, for example, let's turn this down to C. And then we're going to put in a device called a note transpose. I'm pretty sure every DAW has something similar to this. Ableton has I think it's called MIDI pitch. Cubase has semitone transpose. So there's ways of doing this with every DAW. So the amount of semitones in between, so we dragged it down 5 semitones to get from F to C. So what we can do is we can turn this up by +5, and now this C is playing an F. So this is powerful because it kind of allows us to change things on the fly. Say, for example, we've written the whole bass line, and now we're like, I want it in F sharp. We don't have to dive back in and shift all the notes. All we can do is just turn it up by 1. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit less of a nuclear approach to choosing a key. Okay, so the other reason why I generally do this is because I've kind of memorized all of the notes in the various C scales. So for me, it's a lot easier to, for example, quickly write something in C than to have to think like, what notes are in F, what notes are in G. For me, it's just a much easier way to approach things. I find it a lot easier to memorize all of the scales in a single note because you can transpose it than to memorize all of the scales times 12, because you're just maxing out the amount of memory capacity, RAM, that your brain has. You know what I mean? That being said, I generally don't get too technical with the note choices of a bass line, but just being able to know, for example, if we shift it here and we know, okay, that's in scale, or if we just put it there and we know it's in scale, it's just an easy way to work, right? And now, you see we've written this whole thing, right? And say, for example, we've got various iterations of like different loops of this, like different versions and stuff. Now we decide, we actually want to write this track in F sharp. Instead of having to go into each one and change it or select them and semitone shift plus and minus, we could just do it here on the instrument channel. So that's a nice way of approaching that kind of thing. Okay, so let me just set this all back to 0. That was actually pretty cool. We could use that, but the concept that I kind of want to show you today is how to be able to quickly write a melody like that for your bass, and it most of the time will probably sound good. With a little bit of practice, of course. There's a couple of key factors, in my opinion, to writing a really cool bass line. What I want to do is I want to break down this concept of kind of bars and just use single beats. So what we can do here is we can actually copy this and let's delete these and move this like this, right? So here we just have the single beat repeating pattern. And so now what we want to do is we can actually move this up a little bit because we want to focus a little bit more on the scenes here. We can drag this along, change the color. So now we know we've got a different variation here. And then now what we can do is we can start to fiddle with this. So let's say, for example, the middle of the 3 notes. I call this note 2, but I mean, it's a bit confusing if the empty space is note 1 for you. So it's the middle of the 3. And so now the reason I've kind of broken it up into these kind of molecules, let's say bass molecules, is because now we can jump between them in audition. So now we can say, practice and see how it sounds. Right? Or it's a little bit easier now to just drag and drop these kind of variations into the project and make a larger bass pattern that has a bit more movement and sequence. Do you know what I mean? See, already there, it's pretty interesting. It's a bit it's more, I guess, foresty or that kind of like darker full-on stuff. It's not too melodic, but it's an interesting bass line nonetheless. It's much better than just that flat bass line. Do you know what I mean? So already just using a combination of these two and changing this variation like that and placing them and sequencing them like that, we're able to take very simple building blocks and make something that sounds a lot more groovy, right? So we can expand this idea much, much further, right? We're not limited to just using single octaves or just the middle of the 3 notes, right? Generally speaking, it's the middle or the last one. You don't want to do too much variations of the first note in a sequence, except if it's like at the end of a bar, right? So I'll make an example now. Let's duplicate this. And now let's just shift this one up. And then we can change this color as well again. And now let's duplicate this one. And instead, let's do the last note like that. And now we can change the color. So now what we can do is we can kind of just play with this variation here. Orange, green, red kind of thing. And then do green, red. And then if we just press Control J, that's the Bitwig hotkey, it kind of consolidates them all into a larger clip. Okay, cool. So it's already sounding really cool. I like that. But again, like I said, you can expand this idea so much further. You're not just limited to these kind of single notes here. You can say, for example, create variations which are other notes in the scale. Let's say G sharp, duplicate that. Let's make a G, duplicate it again, and then D sharp. So there's also a trick we can do here using the next actions in Bitwig. So let's just select all of these kind of more exciting with the octave variations. And over here in the inspector panel, let's click next action on, and let's go like this and click random in block. And so what a block is basically like a collection of scenes. So if there's a gap here, it's going to treat these as 2 blocks. So random in block, it's going to basically randomly play one of these in this block, and you can set the amount of times it loops before it does it. So let's say 1, you can set it to 4 if you want, but 1 I think is more interesting because that's going to give us that groove. And then what we can do is we can actually just record that directly into the channel, right? So if we hit record, oh wait, we need to actually play. Now it just randomizes us a bass pattern. Okay, cool. So then what I do is I'll jump in here and just find the parts that I think are the coolest parts. Let's actually just remove some here so it's exactly square. And then we just consolidate these blocks like this, right? And then I'll go through them and figure out which ones actually sound cool and which ones don't. Let's just move all of these over here. That's actually pretty cool, that variation, up, down, up. And then here at the end, we can do like we can actually manually edit something. So let's say da da da. And so here, remember what I was saying with the first note variation in the last of the bar. So if you hold off on those variations throughout the bar and you just do it at the end, it's a very nice way of signifying like the end of a groove and the beginning of a new one. Does that make sense? Okay, so now say, for example, we want to change the key, right? What I was saying at the beginning. Instead of having to jump in and edit every single one of these things that we've generated and every one of these scenes, we can just do that. Boom, and now it's in F sharp. Ooh, I actually like that. I'm going to throw in some leads quickly. Cool. Okay, I think that about sums up the ideas that I wanted to talk about in this video. Like I said, not brand new ideas, nothing too technical, kind of just my most up-to-date approach to writing bass lines. And yeah, I'm actually pretty surprised that we managed to write something so cool so quickly. I guess it's testament to the technique. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, like I was saying, if you like any of these sounds, except for the synth sounds, those aren't actually anything that's released yet. It's part of just like some cherry pies that I was making one day. I may still do those kind of loop stuff, but I think the synth presets are more important for me because they're easier for you guys to use musically. Anyway, so all of the drum sounds, the bass sounds, all of that kind of stuff is available on my store. And if you want to support me, also a really cool way of doing that is through Patreon, where I do this inner circle thing, which is like a music support group. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. See you guys next time. Yeah, don't forget the like button and the subscribe button. Cheers.